Unaware his pregnant wife had just inherited a $50 billion empire, Andre Coleman slid the divorce papers across the hospital tray and told her he was leaving. Leaving her and leaving their sick child clinging to life 2 floors above, to marry his billionaire CEO boss. He didn't look at the dialysis schedule taped to her purse. He didn't look at the swell of the child she was still carrying. He looked at Vivian Cross, standing in the doorway in a white coat that cost more than their son's last hospital bill. And he smiled like a man who'd finally traded up. Maya Coleman, 34, who'd slept 11 nights straight in a plastic hospital chair so her 6-year-old wouldn't wake up alone, who'd hidden her own swelling ankles and chest pains so no one would worry, just stared at the pen he set on top of the papers. She had no idea that 3 hours earlier, a law firm representing the grandfather who disowned her mother decades ago had been frantically trying to reach her, to tell her she was now the sole heir to a $50 billion empire. And Andre had no idea either. But the cruelest twist wasn't the affair, wasn't the timing, wasn't even abandoning a dying child to marry the woman signing his paychecks. The cruelest twist was the prenup, the one Andre himself had insisted on, the one he bragged about, the one he never read past the page he signed. So what did that prenup actually say? Why was Vivian Cross so desperate to have Andre divorced this week? Not next. And when Maya finally opened the email she'd been too exhausted to read, what did she realize she'd been holding in her hands the entire time? The room smelled like bleach and cold coffee. Somewhere down the hall, a machine beeped in a slow, patient rhythm. The same rhythm Maya had fallen asleep to every night for almost 2 weeks. She pressed her hand against her belly, where the baby kicked once, soft, as if asking what was wrong. "Andre," she said quietly, "Elijah's numbers were bad this morning. The doctor said his kidneys." I know what the doctor said. He didn't even let her finish. He checked his watch, a new one, gold, heavy. "I read the messages. I just don't think it changes anything." She blinked at him. "He's our son. He's your project." Andre said it flatly, like he was reading it off a page. "Everything is your project. The boy, the pregnancy, this whole sad little life you keep dragging me into. I'm done being dragged." Maya felt the words land somewhere deep, in a place that didn't bleed right away. Behind Andre, Vivian Cross shifted her weight, arms folded, watching with the calm of someone who had already decided how this ended. She was the CEO of the firm where Andre worked. She was 46, sharp as glass, and she wore success the way other people wore perfume. "Why is she here?" Maya whispered. Vivian answered before Andre could. "Because Andre and I are building something real," she said gently, like she was doing Maya a kindness. "And real things require clean beginnings. No loose ends." Loose ends. Maya looked down at her belly, at her swollen feet in the cheap hospital slippers, at the photo of Elijah taped to her purse, his gap-toothed smile from before he got sick, before the tubes and the machines and the words no parent should ever hear. "He's 6 years old," Maya said. "He still asks for you. Last night he asked when Daddy was coming back." For 1 second, just one, something flickered across Andre's face. Then it was gone, swallowed by something colder. "Sign the papers, Maya." "I can't even stand up straight," she breathed. "I had a contraction an hour ago. They're watching me too. Did you even ask? Did you even ask if I was okay? That's not my job anymore." He tapped the envelope. "My lawyer drafted everything. The prenup makes it simple. You came in with nothing, you leave with nothing. Kept it fair. Kept it clean. You should be grateful I'm even letting you keep the boy." Letting her keep the boy. As if Elijah were a piece of furniture. As if their dying son were something to be divided. The nurse by the door, a heavy-set woman named Patrice who'd brought Maya extra blankets without being asked, stepped forward. "Sir, this is private." Andre didn't even turn around. Patrice stopped, jaw tight, and looked at Maya. Maya gave the smallest shake of her head. "Don't. Not for me." Patrice stepped back, but she didn't leave. She stayed against the wall, arms crossed, watching everything. Maya stared at the pen. At the man she'd married 8 years ago in a courthouse with $12 between them and a future they swore they'd build together. She'd worked 2 jobs while he finished his degree. She typed his resumes, ironed his shirts, believed in him when no one else did. And now he stood over her hospital bed, glowing with borrowed money, and called her a loose end. Her phone buzzed on the tray. An email. The screen lit up, Whitfield and Crane, attorneys at law, urgent third attempt. She didn't reach for it. She didn't have the strength. She thought it was the hospital billing department again, or a collector. She let it go dark. I need time, she finally said. I just need time to think. Andre laughed, soft and empty. You've had 8 years, Maya. You've had every chance. Time's the one thing you've always wasted. Vivian placed a manicured hand on his shoulder. Easy. But her eyes stayed on Maya, and in them was something that wasn't quite triumph. It was hunger. The look of someone who needed this divorce finished fast, before something she couldn't name slipped out of her grip. Maya didn't know why yet, but she saw it. Okay, Maya whispered. Andre blinked, surprised. Okay, I'll sign. Her voice was calm now, steady in a way that made Vivian's smile falter for just a heartbeat. But not today. I just had surgery scheduled for tomorrow. My doctor won't clear me to make legal decisions tonight. That's the law, Andre. You can wait 2 days. You've already waited this long to leave. His face darkened. You're stalling. I'm recovering, she said softly, from building a family alone while you built a new one behind my back. And as Andre snatched up the envelope and turned for the door, Vivian lingered 1 second too long, staring at the phone still glowing faintly on the tray, at a subject line she couldn't read, but somehow felt. 2 days passed, but they didn't feel like days. They felt like one long night that wouldn't end. Maya sat in the hospital chapel at 3 in the morning, the only place in the building that was quiet. The pew was hard under her. The stained glass above the altar threw soft blue light across her hands. Hands that had held her son through every needle, every fever, every scream. She finally opened the email. She read it once, then again, then a third time because the words wouldn't sit still. Dear Ms. Coleman, we represent the estate of your late grandfather, Cornelius Vance. You are the sole heir to Vance Global Holdings, valued at approximately $50 billion. $50 billion. With A.B., her grandfather, the man who'd thrown her mother out at 19 for marrying a poor man. The man Maya had never met, never spoken to, never expected anything from. He'd died alone. And in his final years, the lawyers wrote, he'd hired investigators to find the only family he had left. He'd found Maya. He'd watched her from a distance. He'd seen her struggle, seen her work, seen her stay. And before he died, he'd left her everything. Maya pressed the phone to her chest and wept. Not for the money. She wept because somewhere out there, a stranger had seen her when her own husband couldn't. If this story is already gripping your heart, do me one small favor. Tap that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell right now, so you never miss the moment everything turns around. Trust me, you do not want to miss what Maya does next. Because here's what Maya understood. Sitting in that chapel with tears drying on her face. Andre had filed for divorce. He'd filed first. And 8 years ago, he had insisted on a prenup. He'd bragged about it at their courthouse wedding, waving it like a trophy, telling his friends he was protecting himself from a girl who had nothing. He'd made his cheap lawyer copy it from a template online to save money. Maya had read every word of that template. Andre never had. And buried on page 9 was a clause that template lawyers love to copy because it sounds powerful. A clause stating that any inheritance received by either spouse during the marriage, or within 90 days of a divorce filing, became shared marital property unless explicitly excluded in writing. Andre had never excluded it. He didn't even know it existed. He had filed for divorce 3 hours after the inheritance landed in her name, which meant, under the very contract he wrote to crush her, half of a $50 billion empire was now legally tangled with their marriage, and Andre had just signed himself into a war he didn't know he was fighting. Maya wiped her eyes. She called the only number that mattered now. Catherine Whitfield answered on the second ring, even at 3 in the morning. Within hours, the lawyer was on a plane. Down the hall, Elijah was sleeping. Maya walked back to his room and stood in the doorway, watching his small chest rise and fall, the machines humming their patient song. His skin was gray, his lips pale, but he was breathing. He was fighting. "Mommy's going to fix everything," she whispered. "I promise." By morning, everything had changed, quietly, invisibly, the way real power moves. Maya transferred Elijah to the children's wing of the best hospital in the country. A private suite with the top kidney specialist in the world flown in from Boston. She did it under a different name so no one would connect the dots. Within a week, the doctors found a living donor match that had been unavailable before. Because before, Maya couldn't afford the search. Now money opened doors that had been bolted shut her whole life. And as Elijah grew stronger, Maya grew sharper. She didn't buy mansions. She didn't buy jewels. She bought information. She hired investigators to look into Vivian Cross, the woman in the white coat, the CEO, the architect of her destruction. And what they found made Maya sit very still. Vivian Cross's company, Meridian Capital, was bleeding. Quietly, secretly, hidden behind clever accounting, it was 3 months from collapse. Vivian needed cash. Fast, massive, immediate cash, or her empire would crumble and take her name with it. She'd been searching for a partner with deep pockets and a clean reputation. A husband who could front a major acquisition. A husband she could marry quickly, before the press smelled blood. That husband was Andre. That was why she'd been so desperate to have him divorced this week. Vivian didn't love Andre. She needed him the way a drowning woman needs driftwood. And Andre, poor, vain, hungry Andre, had abandoned his sick child and pregnant wife to grab a hand that was only reaching for him to pull itself out of the water. Maya almost laughed, almost cried. Both, maybe. Then Catherine made a single phone call, and Maya made a single decision that would end all of it. Vance Global Holdings, Maya's inheritance, controlled a private equity arm with more liquid capital than Vivian had ever dreamed of. Through a quiet shell company, layer after layer, untraceable, Maya began buying the very debt that was strangling Meridian Capital. She bought the loans. She bought the bonds. She bought the building Vivian's office sat in. By the time anyone noticed, Maya Coleman, the loose end, the project, the woman crying in a hospital bed, owned the controlling stake in the empire her husband had left her for. She owned Vivian Cross. She just hadn't told her yet. 2 weeks later, an invitation arrived at Maya's new home. Thick cream paper, gold lettering. Vivian and Andre were hosting an engagement gala at the Meridian Tower, 300 guests, the press, the elite of the city. Andre was to be announced as the new co-CEO. His big night, his new life, his trade-up, complete. At the bottom, in Vivian's own handwriting, was a note meant to wound. Maya, come see what a real future looks like. No hard feelings. Maya read it twice. Then she smiled, really smiled, for the first time in weeks. "Oh," she said softly, setting down the card. "I'll be there." The night of the gala, the Meridian Tower glittered like something built to be looked at, not lived in. 300 guests in silk and diamonds. Champagne towers catching the light. A string quartet playing soft and expensive in the corner, the kind of music that costs more per hour than most people make in a month. Andre stood near the stage in a tuxedo that fit him like a costume he hadn't grown into yet. He was laughing too loud at something a board member said, his eyes scanning the room every few seconds, checking who was watching him. Vivian stood beside him in ivory, radiant, victorious, her hand resting on his arm the way you'd rest a hand on something you owned. "Tonight," she said into the microphone, raising her glass, "I'm proud to announce the man standing beside me as the new co-CEO of Meridian Capital. Andre Coleman built his life from nothing. And tonight, he begins building something far greater with me." The room applauded. Andre soaked it in like sunlight. Then the doors at the back of the ballroom opened. Maya walked in. She wasn't wearing diamonds. She didn't need them. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair down, her face calm in a way that made people instinctively stop talking. Beside her walked a small boy in a little gray suit. His cheeks full of color now, his step steady, his hand wrapped tight in hers. Elijah, healthy, alive, smiling. The room went quiet in pieces, like a wave rolling backward. Andre's champagne glass stopped halfway to his mouth. "Maya," he said, his voice cracking the silence. "What are you?" "I was invited," Maya said simply, holding up the cream-colored card. "Vivian wanted me to see what a real future looks like." She looked around the room, at the gold and the silk and the 300 strangers staring at her. "So here I am." Vivian's smile didn't move, but something behind her eyes went very still. "This is a private event, Maya. I think it's time you." "Funny thing about private events," Maya said. "They're a lot harder to host when you don't actually own the building. If your heart is pounding right now, just like mine was writing this, make sure you're subscribed and that notification bell is turned on, because what happens in the next 60 seconds is the moment this entire story has been building toward, and you will not want to miss it." Catherine Whitfield stepped forward from the doorway, a slim folder in her hands, and the click of her heels against marble was the loudest sound in the room. "3 weeks ago," Catherine said, her voice carrying easily, "trained for rooms exactly like this one. Vance Global Holdings acquired controlling interest in the debt structure underlying Meridian Capital, including this building, including the majority of Meridian's outstanding shares, purchased quietly through a holding company called Cornerstone 3. Vivian's face went the color of the tablecloths. That's impossible. Cornerstone 3 is a private fund." "It doesn't. It's owned by my client," Catherine said. "Maya Coleman, sole heir to the Vance estate valued at $50 billion. Inherited 3 hours before your fiancé filed for divorce." She turned, slow and deliberate, toward Andre. "A divorce filed under a prenuptial agreement you wrote yourself, Mr. Coleman. Page 9, paragraph 3. Any inheritance received during the marriage, or within 90 days of a divorce filing, becomes shared marital property. You signed it. You bragged about it. You never read it." Andre's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "Which means," Catherine continued, "as of this morning, Mrs. Coleman holds legal claim to 50% of all assets accumulated under that marriage, including, Ms. Cross, your husband-to-be's newly announced equity stake in this very company. The company you needed him to save." Gasps rippled through the crowd like wind through dry grass. Phones came out. Someone in the back was already filming. Vivian grabbed Andre's arm. "Tell me she's lying. Tell me you read it." Andre stared at Maya, and for the first time in months, fear cracked through the polish. "Maya, please, we can talk about this. Privately." "You didn't want privacy 2 weeks ago," Maya said quietly. "You wanted an audience. You served me divorce papers with her standing in the doorway, smiling. You told our son's nurse this was a private family matter while you humiliated me in front of strangers. So no, Andre. Tonight we do this exactly the way you taught me." She knelt down beside Elijah and brushed his hair back. "Say hi to Daddy, baby." Elijah looked up at his father with the simple honesty only children have. "Hi, Daddy. I got better. The doctors said my kidneys are working now." Andre's face crumbled. Something human finally broke through. Too late, the way it always comes too late for people like him. "Eli, you can talk to your son later," Maya said, not unkindly, just final. "Tonight isn't about you." She turned to the crowd, the cameras, the stunned silence of 300 people who'd come for champagne and gotten a verdict instead. "My grandfather left me an empire I never asked for," Maya said. "But the truth is, the real inheritance isn't the money. It's knowing exactly what kind of people deserve to stand beside you, and what kind don't. I didn't come here for revenge. I came here to take back what was already mine. My son. My name. My future." She picked Elijah up onto her hip, even though her arms still ached from months of exhaustion, and walked toward the doors. Vivian was already being pulled aside by panicked board members. Andre stood frozen in the middle of the room he no longer controlled, in a tuxedo that suddenly looked like a costume for a man who no longer existed. 6 months later, Maya sat on the porch of a quiet house. Not a mansion, just a home with a wide backyard and a swing set Elijah had begged for. Her newborn daughter slept against her chest. Elijah ran across the grass, laughing, strong, alive. The Vance Foundation, the charity Maya built with her inheritance, had already funded kidney research for 40 children who couldn't afford what she once couldn't either. She didn't think about Andre much anymore. She thought about her son's laughter, the weight of her daughter's breathing, the quiet, unstoppable proof that she had survived the worst night of her life and built something better out of it. If the story moved you even half as much as it moved me telling it, hit subscribe, tap that notification bell, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Maya's place? We'll see you in the next story.